Hello, welcome to my another video. In this video, I am going to talk about another design pattern which is called state design pattern. State design pattern is a behavioral design pattern. As its name suggests, it basically helps object alters behavior based on its current state, which means your software can have many state, or your software can have an object or class which can behave differently based on different states, and one state can transition to another state based on some conditions. In such cases, we can use state design pattern. There are some other scenarios like when object behaves differently based on the current state, we can use state design pattern. When a class contains lots of conditional statements, sometimes it can happen that we have to write many if-else statements, switch statements, lots of conditions, which makes a particular class very fat and hard to maintain. In such cases, we can use state design pattern. Third, when there are lots of duplicate code in each conditionals and require transition from one state to another. Basically, in our real-world software development, we have to write code which maintains lots of states, and we need to write many codes which basically contains transitional state code. Now I am going to show a brief implementation of the state design pattern. In this implementation, we have two states, concrete state A and concrete state B. And each state will contain its own implementation, its own methods, and its own logic. And we have a context class. This class will hold the current state and will transition the state from one to another. And this is the state class. Basically, it will set the context to the current state that we will set from the client. In the client class, we will have a user interface, and based on some condition, we will set the current state. For example, in this program class, we have set the context to the concrete state A. If you go to the context constructor of the context class, here we are setting the concrete state A to the current state of the context. The context class will set the state of the application context. And after that, when we call the request one method of the context, this will basically, we'll call the concrete state A method. This handle one method will be called. Because both the concrete class is implementing or extending the abstract class, we can also use interface instead of abstract class and implement the interface in the concrete classes. So when we call the request one, as we are actually already, as we have already set the context to concrete state A, it will call the handle one of the concrete state A, and it will print this, do some work, and based on some condition, it can transition to concrete state B. And when you go to the set the concrete state B using the context class, it will set the context of the application to the concrete state B. And after that, since at this point the application context is already set to the concrete state B, it will call the concrete state B handle 2 method and do some work. And again, based on some conditions in this application, we are basically, for brevity or for simple implementation, we have just transition to concrete state A from the concrete state B. But in real world scenario, you may have some conditions to transition to concrete state A. So this will again set the concrete state A as the current state, and we'll end the application. Now, if I run the application, here first we have set the context. It is printing the context transition to this line. So concrete transition to concrete state A, and after that it will print these two lines, from the concrete state A, and then it will transition to concrete state B, and it will call the handle 2 method, because at this point this is state B, and we'll print these lines. Concrete state B wants to change of the current context. These lines will be printed, and again it is transition to concrete state A. So this line is basically printing from context, this line. So this way we can leverage the state design pattern to maintain state in our application. Thank you.